Good morning, everyone. We appreciate everyone being here. This is our kind of wrap-up event for our work on crisis management system and cure violence. And we'll be discussing a little bit right now about the findings of our studies. But this is not only about our studies. It's about the cure violence approach, how that fits into overall violence reduction, feasibility, what the promises are of that approach. And I'll go over that shortly. But first I want to thank some people. And I'm sure I won't think of everyone, but I want to thank especially the New York City Council, who started off this work with us after they had been running the gun violence task force, I think it was, and especially Council Member Jumaane Williams was involved from the very beginning and was supportive. I assume there was a moment in time at which the City Council decided to talk to us, and they reached out to us, and I really appreciate that. Because it's not an easy thing to ask a bunch of academic people to evaluate something that's very precious to you, and they took a risk by asking us to do that, because it was clear that we didn't have any preconceived notions. We wanted to do a fair test of the approach. Next, I want to thank Laura Leviton from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. They came in with their very deep pockets and expanded the scope of the study and added a measure of rigor to the design, and that really helped. But as you'll hear about as we talk about this, it got very complicated because we have, you have multiple sites all across the city. Some were already up and running before we started our work, so we didn't have any what we would call baseline, like pre-program period. Then Robert Wood Johnson came and wanted to start 2 new sites, so we had baseline for those 2 sites, but just those 2 sites. So we have overlapping sets, and it gets very confusing when we talk about this. Next, I want to thank Jeremy Travis, who left John Jay just a few months ago, but was the president of the college for 14 years. If any of you recognize the phrase focused deterrence, Jeremy was very close to that group. And if anything, a lot of people think of focused deterrence and the police-centered model as being in opposition to cure violence. And when we started doing this work, I went to him and said, "Are you sure you want us to do this? Because this is basically the home of Coke, and we're evaluating Pepsi." And he said, "No, it's an important question. Go for it." And so I really appreciated that. Next, Gary Slutkin, who I don't think is here today, but we have several people from the Cure Violence headquarters in Chicago, some of whom you will meet. And they also were what I would think would call brave. They have something they've worked their careers on, large parts of their lives. They're really invested in trying to reduce gun violence with this approach. And we come along and say, we really want to test this to see if it's effective and collect data and be rigorous about it and really have a strong test. And they didn't hesitate. They said, let's do that. It's time to do something more than a simple pre-post comparison or this neighborhood has it, that neighborhood doesn't. They wanted to do something more rigorous and try to do a controlled study. So I really appreciate that. And finally, I want to thank Shayla Delgado, who's sitting here in the front row with the camera. I was going to say many of you know her, but you just proved you did. Shayla was the project director who started this project when I think she was about 15 years old, and coordinated all the interviews we did around the community, managed the whole project, oversaw data analysis. And I can tell you, if she wasn't on this project and it was up to me to do all that, it would not have come off so well. So Shayla was the brains and the hard work behind this whole project. So she deserves more thanks than I think anybody. All right.